Walking and chatting live with online friends, I weakly smiled at the camera and slowly collapsed, amid the online friends' cries for help. A sentry holding a gun appeared in everyone's sight. I peacefully fainted onto the soldier's sturdy chest. In my past life, my mentor Li Liangpeng stole core experimental data and sold it overseas, but surveillance showed I was the last person to enter and exit. 2 minutes after I left, a sudden fire broke out, causing an explosion in the laboratory building and destroying all evidence. I was sleeping in the dormitory, with no one able to provide an alibi for me. I was convicted of arson causing significant property damage, sentenced to life imprisonment, and ultimately died in a prison fight. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day the fire started. Since he can fabricate my surveillance evidence, I will use irrefutable evidence to shatter his hypocritical mask. Without me as the scapegoat, how else can he convince the school to accept the loss of hundreds of millions? I've been live streaming for half an hour, and my face, without any beauty filters, has visibly turned pale. The comments have shifted from "the streamer is really a PhD. This concept is so advanced, holy crap. The method the streamer mentioned can actually solve my current technical problem." It turned into "Streamer, you researchers must be lacking exercise, you're breathing pretty heavily. I recognize this road, streamer, just hold on for a few more steps. There's a military base ahead, go there for help. It feels like you're about to collapse. Help, someone's about to pass out on my phone." I looked up, weakly gazing at the screen, my forehead visibly covered in cold sweat. I do feel a bit unwell. Probably a low blood sugar episode. Sorry. The barrage of comments scrolled densely. Streamer, stop talking. Someone help her quickly. Uncle PLA soldier, save her. This member of the masses is a little bit dead. Finally, I saw the gate of the military camp. I mustered all my strength to quicken my pace and stumbled across the yellow line. Halt. What are you doing? The sentry at the gate, holding a gun, immediately became alert when he saw someone with a selfie device barging straight into the restricted area. I lowered my head, and the camera could capture my pale face and slightly closed eyes, but the sentry couldn't see them in his view. An unidentified person ignored his warning and rushed headlong toward the military camp. One sentry raised his gun, while another, calling for reinforcements, cautiously approached me, until I collided heavily with him and then collapsed limply to the ground. Squinting at the time, it was 21:48. 7 minutes before the fire broke out. I took a deep, heavy breath. My tense nerves suddenly relaxed, and my consciousness instantly scattered. Feeling someone shaking me, I struggled to open my eyes, unable to see the face in front of me clearly. I could only try to speak as loudly as possible, but the sound I made was barely audible until he put his ear to my mouth. "I'm sorry, I'm not a bad person, I'm still live streaming. Can you help me turn it off?" The final shot of the live stream was the cap of the People's Liberation Army. As my consciousness settled, I saw my past life. Being dragged out of bed with the covers yanked off in my sleep is a nightmare that haunts me for life. Dressed in thin pajamas, surrounded by a group of police officers and school administrators, I was bombarded with sharp questions about why I had set the fire. All I could do was offer a feeble denial. I didn't do it, powerless to do anything else, as cold handcuffs were clamped around my wrists. I felt as though my entire life had been shackled. During the endless days and nights in prison, I ran through countless scenarios in my mind. The best possible explanation was that the fire had been caused by a short circuit, not by any intentional act on my part, which might have spared me such a heavy sentence. But I have no way to prove that I wasn't the last person to enter and leave the lab. The surveillance footage clearly shows me entering and exiting the building, and the lab's access control system recorded my identity. The evidence is so solid it could bury me. It wasn't until a year later, when my mentor took a teaching position in the United States and published research results developed based on my core technology, that I understood the reason. The purpose of that fire wasn't to destroy anything, but to cover something up. And now, without my cooperation, who else can help him secretly cross the river? I felt someone moving me and struggled to open my eyes. My vision was too blurry, so I tried my best to grab hold of the person in military uniform. No matter who it was. "Little girl, let go first and let the doctor take a look at you. I don't want a doctor to see me, nor do I want to go to the hospital. I want to stay under the surveillance of your unit. Someone is pulling my fingers. It hurts so much." Tears keep flowing, and I use all my strength to never let go. Probably scared her earlier. Nothing serious, just low blood sugar. since she refuses to let go, take her to the duty room first. I stopped struggling and let them carry me into the military base gate. I looked up and stared at the surveillance camera at the entrance. What solid evidence! Someone stuffed a piece of candy into my mouth, and I slowly regained some strength, enough to sit up. A crowd had gathered around me. Unlike the stern, cold faces from my past life, their concerned expressions made tears well up in my eyes. "Miss, are you feeling better now?" Seeing the light in my eyes, a man with 2 bars and 1 star beside me asked with concern. The grievances in my heart surged up, unstoppable like a floodgate opening. I began to wail loudly. The clock on the wall seemed like a countdown, bringing me closer and closer to safety. At 9:50 p.m., Li Liangpeng must have already copied my data in the lab, right? I once considered whether I should report him to the authorities in advance and catch him red-handed, but then I thought again. Besides forging my access card, he even tampered with the school's surveillance data. This isn't something a doctoral supervisor who's been teaching in the country for less than a year could accomplish. At 9:53 p.m., I was sobbing so hard that I started hiccuping. The people around me gradually went from being at a loss to becoming calm, some offering me water, others handing me tissues. Li Liangpeng has already closed the door and left. I don't know what method he used to start the fire. Logically speaking, the lab has comprehensive power-off protection and fire prevention measures. So how could the fire spread so easily, even causing the entire lab building to explode? At 9:54 p.m., my emotions gradually calmed down, and Ergangi couldn't hold back his laughter anymore. "Little girl, you're the most cry-prone person I've ever seen." I pouted awkwardly. I was terrified by what had happened to me, yet relieved about my rebirth. Heaven knows that when I realized I had been reborn just 1 hour before the fire, the sudden surge of joy nearly overwhelmed me. "I can't stay in the dorm," was my only thought at that moment. I grabbed my belongings and immediately fled. It wasn't until I was in the taxi that I snapped back to reality and started thinking about what else I could do. I usually record some faceless videos to share learning experiences and methods, but now I decided to go live with my face showing, letting all netizens serve as my witnesses. Fainting at the military camp gate was purely coincidental. When I woke up, I had been awake for over 20 hours and was just about to sleep. Otherwise I wouldn't have been so deeply asleep that I didn't even notice the fire. The dual pressure on my mind and body was simply too much to bear. In this situation, the timing of my hypoglycemia was just right. "Should I call an ambulance for you?" Seeing the smiling eyes of Ergangi. "You still look unnaturally pale." 9:55 p.m., the second hand of the clock seemed to be ticking right on my heart. "Okay, sorry to trouble you." I stopped sobbing and thanked them. The fire department arrived before the ambulance. Several fire trucks sped by with their sirens blaring. I stared out the window, watching the red lights fade into the distance. "We've verified all your documents. Here, please keep them safe." I came to my senses and took the documents handed to me by the 2-bar-1. All my documents, ID card, student ID, and lab access card. "Don't worry, we'll accompany you to the hospital." The cheerful voice gave me a great sense of security, so much so that I fell into a deep sleep before the ambulance arrived, until my body was suddenly pulled, nearly throwing me off the bed. "Yi Xiayun, you are suspected of arson and are now required to assist in the investigation." The cold, serious voice, just like in my previous life, sent a shiver down my spine. My head was still a bit groggy as I stared listlessly at the people before me, vacantly asking, "What? Do you really think you can get away with this just by getting yourself hospitalized?" The dean's voice was hoarse, looking as if he hadn't slept all night. "Yi Xiaoyun, we have surveillance footage of you setting the fire and fleeing." Li Liangpeng still maintained his gentle and courteous demeanor, calmly pronouncing my guilt in the softest tone. "You've been stuck in your recent experiments, putting too much pressure on yourself." I told her she wouldn't have to delay her graduation. Who knew she'd be so extreme, preferring to destroy everything rather than admit her own shortcomings. He put on the demeanor of a caring mentor as he explained to the dean and the police, "It's true that she was in the wrong, but I hope you can show leniency given her youth." The police ignored his soft-spoken pleas and coldly addressed me. "She's an adult. She should be responsible for her own actions." "What on earth happened?" I asked, completely baffled, still pretending. The dean angrily pointed at me. "A few minutes after you left the lab last night, it caught fire. The blaze spread and caused an explosion, destroying most of the lab building. Everyone in the school was too scared to close their eyes last night. but you're just great, still in the mood to hide in the hospital and sleep, she then said to the police officer, glaring in frustration. Officer Zhou, take her away, I have nothing more to say to her. I didn't even go near the teaching building last night, I said, propping myself up on the hospital bed and leaning forward, desperately trying to make them believe me. I have no reason to burn down the teaching building, please believe me. No matter how sincere or anxious I was, everyone around me just coldly watched me, as if I were a ridiculous clown. You should be grateful that no one was injured, otherwise we wouldn't be speaking to you so politely. I am the captain of the city's criminal investigation team, and I am now officially notifying you that you are under arrest. Take him away. He grabbed my arm and pulled me off the bed with a rough motion. I stood barefoot on the floor, the coldness of the icy ground freezing my heart. The female officer beside me tightly clamped my wrist, and the gleaming handcuffs were about to snap shut. What are you doing? A firm shout from the doorway interrupted her actions. A young man in military uniform held a lunchbox, frowning and glaring at the people inside the room. Who are you? Li Liangpeng asked him gently. Are you Yi Shuyun's boyfriend? One sentence immediately diluted the authority that the uniform conveyed. It was the battalion commander who sent me to take care of her. The young man ignored Li Liangpeng and walked in, directly addressing Zhou, the officer in police uniform. What do you want? She's still a patient. She is suspected of arson, causing significant property damage. We need to take her to the Public Security Bureau, Team Leader Zhou said in a businesslike manner. The young man glanced at me hesitantly, seeing me pleadingly looking at him. He thought for a moment and then stood directly in front of me. I will accompany her, and I will notify our company commander, otherwise, you won't be able to take her away. It was the familiar interrogation room, and I squinted my eyes under the intense light. Yi Xiaoyun, what were you doing in the lab last night? Captain Zhou and a female officer sat across from me, questioning me sternly. I didn't go to the lab last night. The surveillance footage clearly captured your entry and exit. Denial won't work. He impatiently tapped the table, clearly disdainful of my childish lie. Your advisor said your experiment progress has stalled recently, and you snapped emotionally, leading you to do something extreme. Do you admit it? I don't admit it. I looked up at him seriously. In my previous life, I didn't answer this question carefully, but this time I want to make everything clear. My previous doctoral supervisor was Academician Zheng, a leading figure in our industry. He had been guiding my project, which was progressing very smoothly. If completed, it could have led to a qualitative leap in our country's artificial intelligence. Unfortunately, Academician Zheng went to the supermarket to buy something and got caught up in a gang fight, ultimately losing his life. I looked at Captain Zheng and confirmed seriously, this case, I remember, was also handled by your team. Captain Zhou, yeah, but what does all this have to do with you setting the fire? Captain Zhou glared at me, annoyed by my rambling. My PhD has lasted 3 years, and 2 of them were under the guidance of Academician Zheng. Li Liangpeng has only been my supervisor for half a year. After all, he's been teaching back in China for less than a year. I gave a sneer toward the one-way mirror behind me. Let me ask you, how come the project I was nearly finishing with Academician Zheng suddenly became an erroneous study that stalled and might even cause me to graduate late? In Li Liangpeng's words, if this reason can't even hold up, what possible motive would I have for setting the fire? Finally, I leaned back in my chair, spread my hands, and the handcuffs rattled. Captain Zhou frowned in thought when suddenly the door to the interrogation room was pushed open. Captain Zhou, someone from the military is here, a young man whispered to Captain Zhou. I saw his brow gradually furrow, and then he stood up and quickly walked out. What's going on with your school? Last night at 21:55 Yi Xiaoyun wasn't at the school at all. She fainted at the military base entrance, and tens of thousands of netizens can testify to that. So who exactly was the person captured on your surveillance footage? A roar from Captain Zhou came through the half-open door. A fire incident, because the school proactively reported it, turned into a malicious arson case, and the key evidence they provided actually had issues. Seeing the sinister look in Li Liangping's eyes outside the door, I flashed him a provocative grin. When I was released from the interrogation room, I saw the 2-bar-1 from yesterday standing off against the dean with a strong presence, full of lies. I don't care what your school is trying to pull, but the dozens of people in our unit have sharp eyes, just based on the fact that you pinned the blame on her without even asking for an explanation. Your own suspicion is greater than hers. The dean was so angry he couldn't speak, trembling as he retorted, "The surveillance footage caught her, and the access control system shows she was the last to leave. We're just making a reasonable suspicion. That makes it even more interesting, seeing me come out." Second bar one smiled at me. "Didn't you give me a bunch of documents to look at yesterday? Was there an access card among them?" "Yes." I took my card out of my bag and handed it to Captain Joe. I always carry the access card with me. If someone used my card to enter the lab at the same time, then we can check for any foul play. "Captain, there are a lot of reporters at the entrance." A young police officer hurried over. "They heard we caught the university arsonist and want to interview us. Who leaked the information?" Team leader Joe cast a suspicious glance at several people from the school. "We have never officially announced this was arson. It must have been leaked by you." His scrutinizing gaze swept across their faces one by one. The dean's face began to sweat uncontrollably, while Li Liangpeng remained calm, though his eyes flickered slightly. Finally, Captain Joe sternly addressed the officers around him. "Interrogate each of them separately." Seeing several people being taken away from the school, Captain Joe turned to me and second bar one, his face still grim and showing no sign of easing. "This isn't as simple as it seems. Someone is trying to steer us into making you the scapegoat. I'm afraid this goes beyond just a fire. If it weren't for your unit coming forward as witnesses, even if she had been live streaming the whole time, there might have been people trying to manipulate the situation. Getting cleared of blame wouldn't have been so easy." I gratefully smiled at second bar one, then said to Captain Joe, "Is it possible that they started the fire to cover something up?" "You mean?" Captain Joe also thought of the laboratory where the fire first broke out. "Li Liangpeng keeps emphasizing that my research has failed. If I'm really arrested, who would care about this project anymore? And you said he just returned from the U.S. less than a year ago." Captain Joe's eyes suddenly lit up, and everything suddenly connected. I looked at him approvingly, but he seemed a bit embarrassed. "Sorry for being so rough with you earlier, but for your safety, I suggest you stay at the police station for now. If there's really something wrong with the school, they'll definitely target you again." Gangi and I exchanged a glance. Then I said to Captain Joe, "I'll stay at the police station with her." Team Joe entered the interrogation room, while I checked social media behind the one-way glass, where things had already turned into chaos under the headline "University Lab Explodes. Suspect turns out to be a PhD student with mental breakdown." Most comments were mocking. "I'm from this school, never heard this fire was caused by humans. Where did you get this rumor?" Editor, just make one up and it'll be fine." He even included pictures. Could this girl be the one who fainted during yesterday's live stream? Facepalm. The suspect fainted at the same time at the entrance of the military base. Should the editor make up another murderer? I didn't do it. This really has nothing to do with me. The voice was so loud it came through the door, indicating the dean was truly flustered. I put away my phone and watched as the dean, his face contorted, defended himself. "I just wanted to find someone responsible for this fire, so I wouldn't have to take the blame." "What about the surveillance and access control? Who forged the evidence?" Team leader Joe's eagle-like gaze locked onto him, and he instantly broke out in a cold sweat. "It was Li Liangpeng who said he found out Yi Xiaoyun was the last person to leave. Whether she intentionally set the fire or not, she still bears responsibility for inadequate supervision, so we just let her take full blame. All this data was obtained by us from the back end. I never forged any evidence. I really don't know why it's considered fake." Seeing him desperately trying to convince the police, I felt as if I were reliving my previous life when I couldn't defend myself. How ironic. Harming others ultimately harms oneself. Li Liangpeng had been left waiting for quite a while before Captain Joe finally arrived. He still maintained a polite smile, but it was shattered by Captain Joe's blunt remark, "Your dean has already confessed everything. Now it's your turn to talk." Li Liangpeng's lips froze mid-curl, remaining stiff for a moment before he finally spoke. "What do you mean I have something to say? You still refuse to confess? Do you really think we know nothing?" An impatient young officer beside him slammed his hand on the table, furious. "Why did you frame Yi Xiaoyun? Was it to steal her project? The dean told you that." He stared at the police with a fake smile. "What would I want with her project? She's a doctoral student who hasn't even graduated yet. What kind of project could she possibly have that would catch my eye? I was hired by the university at a high price to teach. I wouldn't stoop so low as to covet a student's project." He looked up arrogantly at the other person, enjoying the sight of their speechless anger, and smiled with great satisfaction. Then why did you frame Yi Xiaoyun? Captain Zhou asked lightly. He hesitated for a moment before calmly explaining. I didn't set her up, I don't know what you're talking about, seeing him stubbornly deny it. Captain Zhou didn't get angry. Instead, he laid out the items from the evidence bag one by one. The dean said you told him to shift the blame onto Yi Xiaoyun. His phone has a call recording function, and here is your conversation. You introduced your junior from abroad to work at the school. She's in the logistics department and helped you replace the previous surveillance footage with yesterday's, and also duplicated Yi Xiaoyun's ID card. This is her signed confession. This is the original video from yesterday. You were the last person to enter and leave the laboratory. How do you explain that? As the pieces of evidence were presented one by one, Li Liangping's expression grew increasingly grim, and he visibly broke out in a cold sweat. When the final piece of evidence was presented, Li Liangping saw the empty evidence bag, fell silent for a moment, and his expression actually eased considerably. He confessed outright, I was the last one to leave the laboratory, but I didn't do anything. I have no idea how the fire started. You can go verify it. It was definitely an accidental fire caused by a circuit issue or machine overload. He raised his eyebrows and sincerely explained, I know I bear responsibility for inadequate supervision, so I am willing to compensate the school for the losses, whether it's millions or tens of millions. I accept it. He really is acting with impunity, remarked the two-bar one, sarcastically. This matter isn't that simple. We have already requested assistance from the National Security Bureau to handle it. Captain Zhou walked in, with deep dark circles under his eyes and a weary expression. He took a gulp of strong tea before speaking up. The investigation into academician Zhang's death will also be reopened. At the time, we looked into the identities of the thugs involved. It was indeed a sudden brawl, so we didn't suspect it was murder. Now, after cross-checking with the National Security Bureau, we've discovered that over the past decade, quite a few high-tech talents have died under suspicious circumstances. Some were even individuals who had just returned to work in China after completing their doctoral studies abroad. That's why we didn't connect these incidents. Now it seems the situation is even worse than we imagined. We also have to thank you for your quick thinking, he said, making a joke with a hint of helplessness. Quick thinking. I paid for it with my life. When our group appeared at the entrance of the police station, the sudden flash of cameras outside nearly blinded me. Captain Zhou, however, was quite accustomed to such scenes. He faced the cameras with ease and said, the cause of the university fire has been clarified. The fire was caused by a circuit malfunction. A professor, being the last person to leave the laboratory, colluded with a friend who worked at the school to falsify surveillance and access control records in order to evade responsibility, and falsely accused his student. School administrators were also deceived by him and inadvertently collaborated with him. If it weren't for the fact that the falsely accused student happened to be live streaming outside the school, with a large number of netizens and the People's Liberation Army serving as witnesses, he might have actually succeeded. How could it be such a coincidence that so many people just happened to prove she didn't intentionally fabricate anything? A reporter sharply questioned. We went to the school for interviews, and many students said the student involved is indeed reclusive and often inexplicably irritable. Is it really impossible that she set the fire? The matter has already been thoroughly investigated, and the professor involved has confessed. Captain Zhou frowned, explaining with forced patience, I heard this professor just returned from abroad. Are you sure you didn't subject him to excessive interrogation? Captain Zhou's gaze suddenly turned stern, glaring at her several times before saying seriously, we are already in the 21st century, whether domestically or internationally. Cases are handled based on evidence. Since we dared to report the case details to the media, it means we've already investigated thoroughly and are basing our conclusions on factual evidence. Seeing Captain Zhou's intimidating presence, the reporters finally stopped being difficult and stepped aside to let us pass. Sitting in the car, Captain Zhou first glanced at me with concern, then gave a subtle signal to the officer beside him. A few people quickly disappeared and followed the reporters who had just left. Li Liangping was released after only a few days in custody. There was no sign of human involvement in the fire. Although he bore supervisory responsibility, his attitude toward admitting fault was good, and he actively compensated, so the school decided not to pursue the matter further. After receiving the compensation, both sides amicably negotiated, and Li Liangpeng resigned voluntarily. My situation, however, was not so good. Captain Zhou's concerns were not unfounded. Shortly after returning to school, online criticism flooded in. First came the confusion over why a line accident could cause such a large-scale fire, suggesting the police must be concealing something. Then they started suspecting the school authorities were shielding me, calling me an academic temptress. They claimed that when I was under Academician Zheng's tutelage, he always kept me by his side not because he valued me, but because of some under-the-table deal. Otherwise, how could I have achieved so much at such a young age? The new professor was merely my scapegoat. The school bullied him, a patriotic intellectual just returned from abroad with no connections, making him the perfect person to blame. Uninformed classmates were incited. Whenever I walked around campus, passers-by would hurl insults at me. Some righteous students even directly blocked my way, accusing me of academic misconduct, calling me a disgrace, and saying I had ruined Academician Zheng's reputation. Eventually, somehow organized by someone, many students began boycotting classes, demanding the school expel me. To correct the school's ethos. Looking at the principal sitting in front of me, I felt utterly helpless. We know you're a victim in this matter, but the situation has caused an uproar, and the school must make a statement. The principal adjusted his glasses. Solemnly, you should take a leave of absence for now. The school issued an announcement stating that I still needed to cooperate with the investigation, and that I was currently being placed on leave. All authorizations granted to me by the school were withdrawn, and my accounts were fully closed, pending my return after the investigation concluded. On the day I left campus, I walked out of the dormitory building with my luggage when suddenly a basin of water was poured from above, soaking me completely. Looking up, I saw row after row of people poking their heads out, and the ones holding basins of water were grinning proudly. The grievances of the past few days finally erupted. I threw down my luggage and rushed forward, kicking open their door with one foot. Finding the person who splashed water, I stepped forward and grabbed her hair. Who do you think you are? How dare you splash water on me? She was pulled so hard she couldn't straighten her back, unable to resist, and cried out in pain. Her roommate saw her at a disadvantage and quickly came to help. I freed one hand and slapped her. You bitch, they cried out loudly. Clearly, it's your character that's flawed. You're academically dishonest, and you even seduced the professor. Now you're hitting people too. You actually saw me seducing my mentor, I panted, raising my hand for another slap. Who is Academician Zheng? Do you think dragging these salacious stories about him satisfies your petty curiosity? Mindless. Another slap. Gossip. One more slap. Provoked by others. Another slap. A pseudo-human who can't think for themselves. Another slap. Wasting the nation's educational resources. Another slap. Apologize to Academician Zheng. Another slap. One slap after another. I was in tears when my emotions finally calmed down. Both of them had swollen, red cheeks, a sight too painful to look at. A large crowd gathered around, watching my frenzied behavior, too afraid to stop me, and quickly called the police. I was taken to the police station and detained for 5 days. At 3 o'clock in the morning, a dark figure sneaked into the school's data center. What kind of lousy server is this? So slow, he cursed angrily. Have you tried the HF mirror? I offered a suggestion. The lights came on, revealing the figures of people who had been hiding around. Li Liangpeng looked grave and didn't glance at the transmission screen anymore. Weren't you detained? How come you're here? You teamed up to set a trap for me. How despicable. Professor, did we force you to come here? I sneered, stepping in front of him. Wasn't it you who craved fame without real ability, trying to persecute this innocent student of yours and steal my research data? What did you say? How could you slander me? He completely broke down, unable to maintain his hypocritical demeanor any longer. You're old and useless, have achieved nothing academically, and only got a professorship by selling yourself to the school leadership with that face. I watched with satisfaction as he flared up, every word cutting deep. Selling smiles and bodies is nothing. They laugh at poverty but not at prostitution. What's despicable is that you still want a reputation, insisting on dressing up your facade with academic achievements. And you even set your sights on me. Didn't you just say at the police station that as a distinguished professor, you looked down on a student's project like mine? Does your face hurt from being slapped? Yeah, how dare you? You've obviously climbed up the ladder by sleeping around, doing such shameless and despicable things. You're lying. He lunged at me furiously, as if wanting to tear my mouth apart. I don't care about your project at all. I wouldn't have, if it weren't for completing my mission. He seemed to realize what he'd said, abruptly clamping his mouth shut, his face darkening as he glared at me with murderous eyes. If it weren't for the mission from the United States to steal our country's secrets, you wouldn't have returned home, right? The team leader from the National Security Bureau stepped forward from behind and finished his sentence. I don't understand what you're talking about. His tone was stiff, yet he didn't forget to quibble. Don't understand, it's fine if you don't say anything. We've caught you red-handed anyway, so even if you stay silent, it doesn't matter. The National Security Team leader picked up his transmission device, an encrypted hard drive, with a fairly high level of security. I've seen the surveillance footage before the fire. You didn't carry a bag, and in your light clothing, it didn't look like you were hiding anything. I took the hard drive, truly a spy's tool, made incredibly small. All my core data is stored on my own hard drive. And you've tried several times to figure out my backup method. This month you suggested I use NAS for automatic backup, which was preparation for this, right? Unfortunately, the school's server is too poor, the transfer speed is too slow, and it would take at least several hours to fully download my data, so last time you had to give up halfway, hiding my data under a different root directory just to download it again later. Even the fire was caused by you deliberately short-circuiting the wiring. We found your fingerprints on the flammable materials next to the fire site. The evidence is conclusive, you can't deny it. You've considered everything. Even if framing fails and you get arrested yourself, it doesn't matter, because the United States paid you a sum of money specifically for handling the aftermath. The National Security Team leader took over my words. This AI technology is valued at billions abroad. Even if you have to compensate the school tens of millions, you're still making a huge profit. You're not only seeking fame and reputation but also greedy for money and lust, disguising yourself with a gentle and refined appearance, yet reeking of the stench of money. It's simply unbearable. I covered my nose and made a disgusted expression at him. He simply couldn't bear it, a highly educated intellectual like himself being insulted with such words by us, you lowly, worthless trash from the bottom. Even as the police restrained him, he struggled desperately, his hair disheveled and his clothes torn. Filthy lowlifes, spouting lofty words. You brainwashed people have no freedom, merely lingering in this disgusting country. What's wrong with me working for the beautiful country? They give me respect and freedom, something you people living in pig cages will never understand. Do you really think I wanted to come back? This dirty place is full of ignorant fools. He gradually went mad, laughing wildly toward the sky. So what if you've caught me? Do you really think I'm afraid of you lowly creatures? I'm telling you, the United States promised me before that if I got caught, they would exchange me back through a spy swap. I'd only be locked up in your lousy prison for a little while. My value is beyond your imagination. Ha 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 ha. This person had already lost all sense of reality, spilling everything he should and shouldn't have said. The national security agents didn't waste any time. They handcuffed him and took him away immediately. Will he really be exchanged back to the United States? Standing at the entrance of the building, watching them all get into the car, I asked Captain Joe anxiously. We were hoping he'd be valuable enough to be exchanged, so one of our comrades could return home, Captain Joe said irritably, taking a drag of his cigarette. This idiot has been abroad for so many years and still hasn't obtained citizenship. Damn it, he's still a citizen of our country. Otherwise, how could your school have hired him? After all, it's considered a confidential project. His accomplices were also apprehended simultaneously, and the other teams are already on their way back. Captain Joe had stayed up for who knows how many nights, his eyes bloodshot, and he took another deep drag of his cigarette to stay alert. The United States suffered heavy losses this time. Multiple long-established networks were completely dismantled, which should give your academic community at least a few years of peace. Someone has already confessed to the method used to murder academician Zhang. Regardless of their nationality, we will carry out the death penalty to give you an answer. Goen has requested several mid-level personnel to prepare for the hostage exchange, but Li Liangpeng is not on the U.S. exchange list. I wonder if Li Liangpeng will be so devastated upon learning this that he might bang his head against the wall. His beloved country never even considered taking him in, and he'll likely spend the rest of his life in the prison of the nation he despises the most. Before graduation, I completed the research project I worked on with academician Zhang and submitted it. Soon after, I received a transfer notice and was internally appointed to the Academy of Sciences. Before leaving, I made sure to send banners to both the military camp and the police station. The one for the military featured a cartoon-style PLA soldier saluting, with the words, "Don't believe in light, believe in the People's Liberation Army." The police station wrote, "Super handsome, catches thieves fast." Both the 2-1 and Captain Joe were extremely satisfied, and I will use my knowledge as a weapon, bravely standing on the battlefield that belongs to me. After hearing this story, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your feelings in the comments section below. We begin a new story. On the day I died, my husband was being elevated to godhood by his new book, Living Towards the Sun. The book chronicled the inspiring story of him and his white moonlight fighting cancer together. White Moonlight was a fellow patient he met during his treatment. The entire internet was moved by the resilience of life, as well as the love between them that endured through life and death, but no one knew that my husband's medical expenses were earned by me running food deliveries one order at a time, working during the day and delivering at night. My husband successfully beat cancer, but I died from vomiting blood due to stomach cancer caused by overworking and irregular eating habits. Opening my eyes again, before me was the cancer diagnosis report handed by my husband. The water in my brain flowed down from the corners of my eyes, and I felt incredibly clear-headed. I collapsed onto the sofa. To hell with seeking medical attention as soon as possible. Let me act it out first. I'm back to the day I learned my husband Gu Chuan was diagnosed with cancer. Looking at the diagnosis sheet in front of me, lymphocytic leukemia. Gu Chuan and I were college classmates. We dated for 2 years on campus, got married after graduation, and spent 4 years in our own little world, sweet as honey, and we were planning to start trying for a baby this year. In my past life, I received a phone call from Gu Chuan and hurriedly asked for leave to go home. Hearing about his illness was like a bolt from the blue, but seeing Gu Chuan so dejected, I forced myself to stay strong. I knew I couldn't break down at this moment. Gu Chuan was more vulnerable than me, and he needed me. The diagnosis suggested seek medical attention as soon as possible, so I hastily packed my things and took him to the hospital for treatment on the same day. After all, some things, like bone marrow donation, are on a first-come, first-served basis. In the rush, some oversights were inevitable. That became one of the reasons Gu Chuan later complained to me. Shangwan always acts in a careless manner, never thorough at all. I felt quite guilty at the time, thinking I shouldn't have lost my composure in panic, but later, I overheard him sigh to a fellow patient. If only I had come to the hospital one day later, I could have shared a ward with Xiaohe. His tone was filled with melancholy and regret. Xiaohe was a cancer patient in the adjacent ward, and also the idealized love interest in his book. Thinking of this, I lowered my eyes. I refused to look at the face that had once seemed handsome, but now appeared somewhat repulsive. Sincere, regretful. I'll grant your wish this time. Closing my eyes, I felt a warm liquid flowing from the corner of my eyes, sliding down to my lips. I couldn't taste the saltiness of tears. I think this might be the water from my brain in a past life. I cried even more joyfully, and my mind grew increasingly clear. Sometimes doing something beautifully is far less significant than the weight of the word beautiful itself. I took the opportunity to collapse onto the sofa, tilting my head at an elegant 45-degree angle. My face showed 4 parts sorrow, 3 parts panic, 2 parts confusion, and 1 part vulnerability. Gu Chuan saw me so sad that I cried to the point of losing my voice, and the heavy stone in his heart miraculously loosened a bit. In turn, he softly comforted her. Wan, it's okay, I'll always be here with you. This is something that didn't happen in the previous life. At that time, I quickly wiped away my tears, bravely became his support, and quickly arranged for him to go to the hospital. Throughout the entire process, Gu Chuan was like a puppet on strings, utterly listless. In contrast, I was the one running up and down, having to spare energy to tend to his emotions. Unexpectedly, in this life, just shedding a few more tears made Gu Chuan feel even more comforted, so I only cried without saying a word. It took a long while before the tears finally stopped. After all, crying is quite exhausting. Gu Chuan, let's focus on treatment, you will definitely recover. Without waiting for his response, I struggled to stand up again, muttering non-stop. I said, you rest, I need to hurry to the supermarket, we need to buy towels for the hospital stay, and I kept talking non-stop, hurrying my steps, looking very busy. Gu Chuan's expression became increasingly gentle. I really am a thoughtful and devoted wife who only has his best interests at heart. Preparing things takes time. After everything was ready, I could only wait until tomorrow to go to the hospital for treatment. Listening to the sound of rushing water from the shower in the bathroom, I took out my phone from my bag. The slightly firm touch of my fingertips brought a sense of reassurance. That was the miniature voice recorder I had bought today. I opened a certain short video platform and registered an account. I wrote my first diary entry with a blank expression. The first day after my husband was diagnosed with leukemia. Preparations before hospitalization. Come on, you can do it. You will definitely be able to protect him. The accompanying photo shows the diagnosis document and 2 large bags of groceries purchased today. The identity information on the diagnosis document is masked, revealing only the words leukemia. After posting, I logged out of my account and put my phone back into my bag. The bathroom door opened, and Guchuan came out wearing a bathrobe, his hair still dripping. Instinctively, I wanted to grab a towel to dry it for him. In my past life, I did this every single time, afraid he might catch a cold and affect his treatment. Taking meticulous care of him had already become a habit deeply ingrained in my bones. What's wrong? Seeing me stand up, Guchuan looked a bit puzzled. Nothing, I'm going to take a shower. Withdrawing the hand that was about to grab the towel, I smoothly walked into the bathroom. In the mirror, the corners of my eyes were slightly red. The bathroom was filled with steam, and in the haze, I seemed to see the disheveled version of myself from a past life. I reached out, wiping away the steam on the mirror, and also smoothing out. Ripples had just begun to form in my heart. The person in the mirror had a deep, calm gaze, showing no trace of panic at having just learned her husband had cancer. Early the next morning, I carried 2 large bags and accompanied Guchuan to the hospital. I always kept in mind that I must be a thoughtful and virtuous good wife. Of course, a good wife should record the little moments of daily life. So, with a click, the phone captured our departure photo. In the photo, the woman stands with her back straight, not crushed by the 2 large bags, her face showing a determined smile. In contrast, the man beside her carries a small bag, his smile forced, with a lingering gloom on his face. To anyone looking, I am the good wife who is about to take on the heavy responsibility and won't be crushed by the burden. Diary material +1. After completing the hospitalization procedures, Guchuan smoothly moved into Ward 21. It was also the ward he had longed for in his previous life. In our previous life, we arrived a day early, and he stayed in room 22 next door. Coincidentally, right after he moved in, a bed became available in room 21, right next to Xiaohe's bed, and he regretted it for a long time. Later on, he even resented me, blaming me for being too hasty and causing him to miss the chance to be closer to Xiaohe. Guchuan's bed was by the window, and a girl was sitting cross-legged on the bed next to him. The girl was in her early 20s, had a shaved head, and was reading a book. Hearing the noise, she looked up and flashed a bright smile. Hello, her voice was crisp and clear, nothing like someone suffering from cancer. The girl's smile momentarily left me dazed. She was like a splash of vibrant color in this pale hospital room. Clearly, I wasn't the only one who was stunned. Even Guchuan was taken aback, but then, his eyes lit up like a searchlight. That kind of brightness was different from the gentle warmth I had seen before. In the past, he was like fruit wine, gentle and intoxicating, but now, the light in his eyes is like strong liquor, burning and intense. Hello, I'm Guchuan, everyone calls me Xiaohe, the girl said with a carefree smile. Xiaohe is lively and talkative. Soon, the atmosphere in the ward became lively. She was very at ease about her glaring bald head. Don't mind, it looks a bit ugly, but it's easy to wash your hair. Not ugly, not at all ugly, Guchuan said word by word, his eyes filled with sincerity. Xiaohe was a bit stunned, seeing my busy figure arranging things. She felt a little awkward and quickly changed the subject. So everything had its traces to follow. In my previous life, to cover the expensive medical expenses, I had to deliver takeout after work. The combined psychological and physical stress caused me to lose clumps of hair. Guchuan saw it and was completely disgusted. He told me to take better care of my personal image and not to leave hair all over the place. Wanwan, your hair loss is so bad you can see your scalp. Kind of disgusting. Xiangwan, why are you so careless? Your hair is all over my blanket. Perhaps in Guchuan's eyes, Xiaohe's bald head represents the brilliance of life, while my hair loss is just the messy reality of everyday life. Without a moment's pause, I continued making the bed and tidying up my things. Taking advantage of the cover of my figure, I placed the newly purchased miniature voice recorder in a hidden corner. After everything was tidied up, I went outside the ward and dialed my mother-in-law's phone. In reality, I would no longer foolishly shoulder this heavy burden alone. I am not the ideal daughter-in-law in the eyes of Gu Chuan's parents. One reason is that my parents passed away early, and there wasn't much support at home, but they forgot. When I got married back then, I only symbolically asked for a dowry of 6,600 yuan. In the end, all that dowry money was used to supplement our household expenses. Back then, I thought Gu Chuan was my entire life. All I had was our little family. Being alone, I longed for a family, so I devoted myself completely, pouring in all my heart to run this household. In my past life, Gu Chuan advised me not to touch the elderly couple's retirement funds unless absolutely necessary. We still have around 200,000 in our hands. If anything happens to me, I can't let our parents grow old without support. I couldn't bear to hear him say such things, so I quickly agreed. I thought to myself, I'm still young, I can work multiple jobs, and I'll definitely get through it. But later, his aunt let it slip that my in-laws were holding nearly 1,000,000 yuan from the demolition compensation in our hometown. It turns out my understanding of them was so superficial. After 4 years of marriage, I was still an outsider. In my past life, neither him nor my in-laws ever looked away as I worked during the day and delivered food at night, braving wind and rain. I gradually grew haggard. No one ever mentioned that 1,000,000. The phone rang 7 or 8 times, and I silently counted in my heart, 9, 10. My mother-in-law's dissatisfaction with me was also evident in how she answered the phone. She never picks up my calls immediately. She always waits until the call is about to hang up before leisurely pressing the answer button. Hello, Gu Chuan is in the hospital, I said with a trembling voice. The doctor says the treatment will cost hundreds of thousands. Woo. Mom, what should I do? After a passionate outburst of crying, I hung up the phone, still feeling unsatisfied. I guess the 2 elders will come from their hometown tomorrow. Just like in my previous life, I registered an account on the delivery app again, planning to start delivering food after work. But this time, I won't push myself as hard as I did in my past life. In my past life, I wanted to buy the best medicine for Gu Chuan as much as possible. I wished I could turn into an octopus, constantly refreshing and grabbing orders. And my electric scooter was also ridden at full speed. Several times, I almost got hit. No matter rain, wind, or snow, I basically work until midnight every day before heading home. In order to take on more orders, I often miss meal times, and just hastily eat a few bites of steamed buns or mantou. Now, after eating my fill and drinking my fill, I slowly open the app. Too far away, not taking. Items too heavy, not taking. After picking a few orders, I called it a day and headed home. After arriving home, I logged into the Douyin platform and started editing today's materials, including but not limited to going to the hospital, delivering food, wrote the second diary entry, rushed my husband to the hospital in time. Doctors initially estimated the cost would be several tens of thousands. It's okay, I can still take on part-time work as a yellow jacket, smile JPG. The next day, the in-laws arrived at the hospital. As soon as the mother-in-law entered the ward and saw Gu Chuan, her eyes turned red. Son, you've suffered. Gu Chuan quickly comforted her. Mom, it's okay, the doctor said it can be treated. As he spoke, a hint of guilt appeared on his face. Mom, Dad, I've worried you. The family of 3 was happily enjoying themselves, and me, rushing over in my yellow vest, felt like an intruder spoiling the mood. My voice choked up as I said, Mom, Dad, I'll definitely take good care of Gu Chuan. I tugged at the yellow vest on my body, lowering my head in some shame. Unfortunately, the situation isn't great right now. I only made 41 yuan last night. Halfway through speaking, I couldn't help but wipe away my tears. A hint of emotion appeared on Gu Chuan's face, which had been somewhat reluctant before. My mother-in-law stiffened slightly, and for the first time, reached out to gently pat my arm. You're a good child. We only have Gu Chuan as our child, and even if we have to sell the pot and iron, we must treat him. As she spoke, she pulled out her phone. We came in a hurry. We only have a little over 36,000 here. Let's transfer it to you first for emergency use, and I'll go collect some more from relatives later. With both whole numbers and decimals, it sounded quite convincing. I don't mind it being small at all. With the first 36,000, is the second one far behind? With a face full of emotion, I said, Mom, Dad, Gu Chuan will definitely take good care of you in the future. Days passed one by one. I still worked during the day and delivered a few orders of takeout in the evening. Depending on my mood, I make it a point to check in at the hospital every day, never staying too long. But my photo album is filled with snapshots of my nightly visits. I also prepare nutritious meals for Gu Chuan every few days. Though I can't manage the daily variety and elaborate dishes I used to make in my past life, the doctor emphasized how crucial nutrition is for patients, so I swallowed my pride and asked the doctor for detailed advice, covering everything from main meals to snacks. For a while, doctors would take a detour to avoid him. He also searched online to get Gu Chuan to eat a few more bites. She learned to cook various dishes by following food bloggers she aimed to balance nutrition with delicious taste. I don't want my past life's efforts to go to waste. On a certain app, my diary became increasingly rich. I wrote down all the experiences from my past life of taking care of Gu Chuan, how to get appointments with specialists, how to do compatibility tests, how to prepare nutritious meals for patients, and posted them as detailed content, one article after another. These were all experiences I had gained after countless sleepless nights in my past life, researching extensively and consulting many relevant people. Cancer patients endure physical suffering, while their families face dual pressures of mental strain and financial burden. The number of followers on my account grew from 0 to 10, then to 100, and now over 200. Some people in the comment section began expressing gratitude, saying my sharing was very helpful. The efforts I made in a past life are finally being recognized today, but Gu Chuan still didn't see it. His eyes were now completely filled with Xiaohe. There was one more needle mark on Xiaohe's hand, and it pained him. The book Xiaohe was flipping through was one he loved to read, and it delighted him. They started talking about Norwegian Wood, then moved on to Gone with the Wind, and then Wuthering Heights, and the more they talked, the more they clicked. Xiaohe was like Gu Chuan's spiritual opium. When he was with her, he didn't feel the panic of cancer, nor did he fear the abrupt end of life. Gu Chuan had a bit of a literary youth vibe, which was something I liked about him in my previous life. Whenever he talks eloquently about a classic, I always look at him with starry eyes, but when I share my own opinions, he gives me that you don't understand look. Yet now, he's chatting happily with Xiaohe. I put down the thermos, walked out of the ward, and updated my diary. My husband is talking about literature with his fellow patient, and the smile on his face is so bright. As long as he's happy, that's what matters. It's just a bit of a pity that I can't join in the conversation. I need to work harder. That day, I received a notification from the hospital that Gu Chuan's bone marrow had been successfully matched, and the surgery was scheduled for 2 weeks later. This was a full month later than in my previous life. As soon as I saw the diagnosis report, I rushed him to the hospital without a moment's delay. I was terrified of missing any possible chance for a cure. When I was young, I couldn't keep my parents, and I don't want to face loss again. I can't lose Gu Chuan after the match was successful. I tried every possible means to contact the bone marrow donor. I worked tirelessly and meticulously prepared nutritious meals to ensure both parties were in the best physical condition. Finally, the donor was moved by me and offered to donate half a month earlier, to avoid adding to Gu Chuan's psychological burden. I didn't tell him about the twists and turns involved. I felt like a lone ranger, running wildly in the darkness. I only hoped to run faster, so I could snatch my beloved back from the hands of death. Every late night, I dragged my exhausted body home and fell asleep as soon as I lay down, not even having time to cry. At the moment the doctor announced the success of the bone marrow transplant, I burst into tears in the hospital corridor. In this life, without my efforts, Gu Chuan would have still found a match. This made all my previous efforts seem somewhat redundant. I gave a self-mocking smile, realizing you weren't as important as I had imagined. The night before Gu Chuan's surgery, Xiaohe's condition suddenly worsened, and she was admitted to the ICU. She was more seriously ill than Gu Chuan, diagnosed at a late stage, and couldn't be cured. When I arrived at the hospital carrying the rice bucket, what I saw was a dejected Gu Chuan. Seeing me come in, he didn't even lift his eyelids. I knew exactly what was going on, but I didn't show it on my face. Honey, I brought your favorite braised pork ribs, try some. I looked at Gu Chuan expectantly, even serving him attentively by unscrewing the lid and handing him chopsticks, but Gu Chuan suddenly slapped my hand away with a loud snap, leaving a red mark on the back of my hand. His tone was full of impatience. Why do you only know how to eat all day, Xingwan? I really misjudged you. you're actually this heartless, your health is important. I am at a loss, yet inwardly I sneer, just impotent rage. In my past life, I was blind and couldn't see that he was deliberately taking his anger out on me. When I become the emotional trash can. At that time, he had already undergone a successful surgery and was in the recovery period. When Xiaohe entered the ICU, he also felt down for a while. At that time, I thought it was a post-operative rejection reaction, so I took even better care of him, completely tolerating his bad temper. Now, his surgery is imminent, but Xiaohe's fate remains uncertain. However, is his restless and agitated state more out of concern for himself or for Xiaohe? Leaving the hospital room, I pulled out my phone and furiously wrote in my diary, on the eve of my husband's surgery, his roommate was admitted to the ICU again. He's restless and irritable, snapping at me. It's okay, I'll stay by his side, praying for both of them to be safe and healthy. After some time of accumulation, my account has gained nearly 20,000 followers. As soon as the diary was updated, the comments below were flooded with fans offering blessings. There were also a few who were dissatisfied with Gu Chuan's behavior. Some were curious about this fellow patient. I smiled faintly, not in a hurry. Gu Chuan's surgery was successful. A few days later, Xiaohe also temporarily escaped danger. They both returned to Ward 21 again, having both narrowly escaped death. They almost embraced and wept. I was also moved to tears beside them, of course not forgetting to take photos for keepsakes. After going through this ordeal, Gu Chuan's state of mind also underwent a change. I could clearly feel that his attitude towards me had changed. Wan, you're busy with work, you don't have to come over, I can take care of myself. But I just wouldn't, still insisted on showing up in front of him every day. At first, Gu Chuan was a bit anxious, but a few days later, he called me down to the garden on the ground floor. Seeing his serious expression, I had a feeling that the dust was about to settle. I reached into my bag and quietly turned on the recording mode. Wan, the doctor said Xiaohe only has 2 months left. Gu Chuan's tone was sorrowful, like a wolf about to lose its mate. If I weren't his wife, I would have been moved by his deep affection too. Oh, so what? I said sarcastically. Shangwan, do you have no heart? Gu Chuan looked at me with an accusing expression, as if I were an unforgivable villain, but when he met my calm gaze, he turned his head away somewhat uncomfortably. Wan, Xiaohe is all alone and so pitiful. She's so young, so optimistic, and there are so many sights she hasn't seen. I replied somewhat absent-mindedly as I listened to his lengthy, lyrical outpouring. Compared to romantic sentiments, I truly am just a mundane person stuck in the daily grind of life. Wan, I want to accompany her through her final journey, openly and honestly. You understand, don't you? Gu Chuan took a deep breath and finally revealed his true intention. So, Jun, let's temporarily divorce. After sending Xiaohe off, we'll be together again. Gu Chuan seemed very certain that I would wait for him right where I was, an orphan girl. If not relying on him, who else could she depend on? Jun, don't worry. Great. Gu Chuan was stunned, as if he couldn't believe I agreed so readily. Wan, you agreed? Yes. Not wanting to listen to Gu Chuan's nonsense, I turned and walked away. In my previous life, Gu Chuan proposed divorce after Xiaohe passed away. Perhaps it was Xiaohe's death that made him unable to suppress his inner affection. Or perhaps, at that time, my severe illness and haggard appearance disgusted him. In this life, the two of them were in the same hospital room, spending more time together and deepening their bond. It was expected that the divorce would be brought up earlier. However, none of that matters anymore. As I reached the corner, Xiaohe called out to me, "Sister-in-law, I'd like to talk with you. Is that okay?" She wore a small hat with a ruffled brim on her head, and her lips were coated with a light pink lipstick, but her overall complexion still wasn't as good as before. Unlike the carefree attitude she had when we first met, she now paid much more attention to her appearance. I stopped walking, wondering what she was going to say. My feelings toward Xiaohe are very complicated. In the past life, the two of them never broke through that final barrier, yet she became Gu Chuan's eternal white moonlight. It made me, his wife who had been by Gu Chuan's side for 6 years, feel dull and overshadowed, but from her, I saw strength, optimism, and a carefree attitude toward death. Such qualities are truly captivating. Sister-in-law, do you know, last time when I was in the ICU, I thought I'd never make it out. She gave a self-mocking smile. In the moment before losing consciousness, what I was thinking was, I've never even had a proper relationship in this life. I feel so regretful. Is that terribly ridiculous? I used to not fear death at all. How did I become such a repulsive person? Xiao He was somewhat emotional, her face flushed slightly. I didn't say anything, just quietly looked at her. She seemed to just want someone to listen. I know I'm despicable, but sister-in-law, the doctor said I have at most 2 months left, Xiao He said, her eyes becoming firm, as if trying to convince herself. I want to have a love affair, so that my time in this world won't be in vain. Sister-in-law, I only need 2 months. You still have a long life ahead. Sister-in-law, can you grant my wish? Xiao He looked at me with a pleading expression, but I found it utterly absurd. Haha, I laughed aloud. Are you asking me to step aside and let you have my husband? If I say no, do you think I lack compassion, that I'm particularly heartless? They've clearly already had an emotional affair, yet they still come to me begging for forgiveness, as if that would keep their relationship pure and flawless. Is it possible that whoever is more miserable can trample on moral boundaries? Suddenly, I feel utterly meaningless. From the moment Xiao He couldn't resist the temptation and took the poisoned apple from the witch. That innocent and optimistic girl was already dead. Don't worry, I've already agreed to the divorce. With that, I turned to leave. From behind me came Gu Chuan's anxious voice. Shangwan, it's my fault. Don't take it out on Xiaohe. He was like a mother hen protecting her chicks, shielding Xiaohe behind him. I couldn't be bothered to look at him and quickly walked away. A faint whisper from Xiaohe reached my ears. I'm sorry. That night, I slept very restlessly. I dreamed of my past life. I returned home in a daze, holding the diagnosis report that read advanced gastric cancer. At that moment, the first thought that came to mind was, what a pity. After having a home again, it only lasted for 6 short years. I suppressed the reluctance in my heart and made up my mind not to become Gu Chuan's burden. However, before I could speak, Gu Chuan calmly brought up the divorce. Wan, it was Xiaohe's spiritual encouragement that helped me get through it. Only after losing her did I realize that we were the true soulmates. My head was buzzing, wondering if it was the pain causing me to hallucinate. My stomach was churning, the intense pain making it hard for me to think. Divorce. It took me a long while to grasp the meaning of those 2 words. I want to ask, if your souls resonate, then what does our 6 years together count for? What does all my desperate efforts and unwavering loyalty during this time count for? My lips parted, but all the words got stuck in my throat, choking me so much I could barely breathe. Holding tightly to the diagnosis paper, I felt like a fish out of water, instantly losing the strength to speak, also lost the strength to hold on. 4 years of marriage, carefully nurtured, ended in dismal failure. Due to medical treatment, there wasn't much savings. The property allocated to me was pitifully little. I saw that after the divorce, they were all happy and harmonious. My mother-in-law looked relieved, saying, fortunately, the medical expenses were paid with your money. Otherwise my son's money would have been taken by Shangwan. She has cancer now and is a burden. It's good that you divorced early, son. You already have over 100,000 book fans, and she, an orphan girl, is no longer worthy of you. Gu Chuan sat aside, his expression indifferent, and did not refute. I saw again that the landlord notified him to handle my funeral arrangements. Gu Chuan just replied coldly, we are already divorced and have no relationship anymore. You can notify the others. Then, decisively hung up the phone. I woke up suddenly from a dream. In my nostrils, the metallic scent of blood from coughing it up in my death still seemed to linger. I twisted open the thermos on the bedside table, gulped down 2 mouthfuls of warm water, and only then felt like I had come back to life. The scenes from the dream were too vivid. A chill ran down my spine, and cold sweat broke out. I couldn't fall asleep anymore. I got out of bed, opened the drawer, and took out a small box. Inside was a treasure I had once cherished deeply, a bookmark made of a 4-leaf clover, looking lifelike. This was our first date, and he searched for a long time in the grass before finding it. He made it into a bookmark and gave it to me, hoping it would bring me luck. However, just as the bookmark couldn't retain its vitality, Gu Chuan's sincerity also faded away. Next to the bookmark was a cute little fox plush toy. While we were out shopping, I took a few extra glances at this doll in the claw machine. Gu Chuan then quietly went and tried for 3 days, finally managing to grab this doll. Holding the doll, I felt happiness had visited me once again. My gaze swept over the bookmark, the doll, the keychain. It finally settled on that thick photo album. The girl in the photo was smiling brightly. The boy beside her was gazing at her with gentle yet focused eyes. The him in the photo was utterly different from Gu Chuan, who had so casually mentioned divorce today. It seems only I am living in the memories, yet Gu Chuan has long since moved on, leaving me standing alone, watching his indistinct, fading figure. I took the scissors and cut everything in the box into pieces. One by one finally, I threw it all, box and all, into the trash bin. I went back to bed and fell asleep instantly. This time, on the day of the divorce, I deliberately wore the new floral dress I had bought. Gu Chuan looked at me, momentarily dazed, but his steps toward the Civil Affairs Bureau didn't pause for a second. With a thud, the staff member stamped the official seal, drawing a conclusion to my past 6 years. Wan, don't worry, we'll remarry after some time. Not wanting to listen to his nonsense, I quickened my pace. After the divorce, I no longer had to clock in at the hospital, worry about endless housework, or run deliveries as a side job after work. I devoted more energy to my job. Soon, I secured a major project. In my previous life, I had to take care of Gu Chuan while also juggling part-time jobs. I missed this opportunity. The colleague who secured this project has less experience than I do. After the project was completed, he was quickly promoted, and his position became a notch above mine. This time, the project was completed beautifully. My promotion was a natural progression, and my salary doubled as well. However, on Gu Chuan's side, things weren't as rosy as he had imagined. He has less than a month left. As time goes on, her chemotherapy reactions become more severe. If it were the carefree He from before, it might not have mattered much, but now, she has developed delusions and is no longer fearless. He began to feel anxious and fearful, not to mention talking about everything under the sun with Gu Chuan. Sometimes she couldn't even remain calm. The more she tried to control herself, the less she could restrain her emotions, and Gu Chuan himself was still in the recovery phase, destined never to be He's knight. He was like a withered flower, eventually fading away. He's passing erased the unhappiness of these final days. Gu Chuan began to miss her kindness, just like in a past life. He started writing their love story online. I sneered inwardly, just waiting for you. In the story, He is an optimistic, cheerful, and carefree girl. She is like a delicate flower blooming amidst illness. Though the flower may wither, its fragrance remains, and its spirit endures forever. Every sentence in the book doesn't mention love, yet every word is love. Netizens were deeply moved, feeling sorry for this strong girl, regretting for this couple separated by life and death. The book doesn't say a single word about me as his wife. I've just created a new account and left a comment below. It seems the male lead has a wife. A single stone stirs up 1,000 waves. Thanks to the push from big data, the all-powerful netizens quickly dug up my diary. They compared the details in my diary with those in Gu Chuan's book. One by one, a netizen named Holmes has uncovered a shocking revelation. The protagonist of the diary is actually the wife of the best-selling author. While the husband was being ambiguous with his confidant in the hospital room, the wife was working part-time delivering takeout to pay for his medicine. Gu Chuan is confirmed to be a scumbag. This reversal was so dramatic, netizens who love gossip rushed to leave insults under his posts, then came to my account to comfort me. I logged into my account and updated my first diary entry after the divorce. Divorced, wishing each other well. Taking advantage of this sudden popularity, my followers surged from over 50,000 to more than 500,000. This unexpected fortune has finally come to me. Gu Chuan's book was given negative reviews by fans and reported for removal. Gu Chuan contacted me, hoping I would cooperate to restore his reputation. I blocked his phone number and WeChat, and told him that I still have a lot of evidence that hasn't been released. More than half a year later, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Gu Chuan. His leukemia had relapsed, and he wanted me to visit him. This came as a great surprise to me. In that dream, he recovered very well and did not relapse. Perhaps the surgery was postponed in this lifetime, or the matching donor was different, leading to rejection, or maybe the recovery period was not properly managed. But none of it has anything to do with me. Gu's father and mother also came to my door, trying to emotionally blackmail me. Wan, they say a day of marriage brings 100 days of affection. You're a kind-hearted good child. I only played them a clipped recording, and they slunk away, without a wife to fall back on. The elderly couple reluctantly used their demolition compensation money to treat their son, but after spending half their savings, Gu Chuan still died. Perhaps his conscience got the better of him, as he called me before he died to say sorry. I didn't say I forgave him. I just hung up the phone indifferently, looking at the health check report in my hand that showed healthy, the collaboration invitation from advertisers sent from the back end, and the salary that had just been deposited. I felt incredibly secure inside. After leaving Guchuan, my life has only gotten better. Indeed, this child is my downfall. After hearing this story, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your ideas in the comments section. I look forward to hearing your voice.